Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Ahmed Babic, and today I will be your host. I started my journey with system verification in 2019 and currently working as an Azure DevOps engineer. System verification is a global quality assurance company specialized in advanced quality monitoring and analytics based on artificial intelligence, which is the fastest growing trend within quality assurance. It also provides services within business analysis, test management, test automation, CI/CD, and DevOps. Today, we will be talking about unlocking your potential through Azure DevOps. This session will be performed by my dear colleague, Ayla Sokol. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions about the presentation, about the topic, please type them into the chat box in your Zoom control panel publicly or send them to the host directly. We will bring them up at the end of the presentation as we have planned time for questions at the end. This session is being recorded and it will be sent out later to all of you. Now, without any further delays, let's give a word to Ayla. Please, let's start.
Thank you, Ahmed, and welcome and hello everyone to today's presentation. My name is Ayla Sokol, and I will talk about a tool which is called Azure DevOps Services, a tool that can be of great help within your organizations and projects once you incorporate it with the process implementation as well. So let's get started. I will say something briefly about myself. I have completed my bachelor's in electrical and electronics engineering in Sarajevo, and I am currently working on obtaining a master's degree in computer science and engineering. Prior to working within IT, while still going on master courses, I have also worked as a teacher in mathematics. My current employer is System Verification, and I am a part of this family for almost 2 years. From the beginning, I'm part of Azure DevOps team, but next to this assignment, I have also worked as a quality assurance engineer. Currently, I'm working also on getting certifications as the Azure administrator, Microsoft Azure administrator, and I have enrolled into a TestStar 3.0 program, which is an internal system verification program that focuses on developing your skills as a test automation engineer. So I will present the agenda for today now. We will go through the introduction, where we will talk about some common challenges that projects are facing with. We will then talk about Azure DevOps team, what our visions and goals are when we work with clients. After that, we will continue with some of the details about the Azure DevOps Services. Why did we choose that tool and why do we recommend it when compared to other tools? This will be the demo part of our today's presentation. We will go through features and basics of Azure DevOps Services, and we'll show you some of the steps needed in order to do the complete migration from the tool and also process perspective. Next topic will be connected to the journey of one of our clients, where we will talk about some metrics that we obtained until now from the tool itself. At the end, we will conclude the presentation part of today's webinar and give you the insight into future plans that our team holds. And the remaining part of the webinar after the presentation part will be reserved for all the questions and answers. So all questions that you may have during the presentation and demo, please feel free to leave them in the comment section, and Ahmed will help me out when reading them and answering them aloud. Okay, so when people working on different types of projects are asked on what could be the most common challenges they face on their current setup, a typical answer would be that they are having battles with constant deadlines that are not being met by teams or team members. The other challenges, which are also quite common, would be a lack of good communication and understanding between team members. So here they are. Speed of delivery transparency issues, and the alignment. All of them connected to what we have mentioned right now. So meeting deadlines, planning accordingly, and actually sticking to that plan is what keeps people stressed out. And it is commonly the time when you start putting blame on a lot of different factors. One of the main factors of not keeping up with the delivery on time is also transparency. Team members do not communicate well, they are not open enough about their work, and they often lack collaboration since you are not able to follow their work frequently. There is also the issue with the alignment since teams tend to adapt work on what they think is the best rather than to focus on one common vision for the whole project. These challenges are of a great matter and they should be addressed accordingly. Organizations and projects should have their mindset on handling them properly, starting from following a right process to using a right tool. We now come to the goals of the presentation, which are related to what we have been talking about right now. So we will understand what the pros are of using correct tool, in our case, Azure DevOps Services, with the implementation of a right process within projects, which in our case would be Agile. We will understand why and how to migrate to Azure DevOps Services, and also give you some basic overview about the tool itself, how it was helpful in our case, and how it can be helpful in yours as well. This webinar will serve a purpose as the introduction into future presentations that our team will be organizing on a couple of related topics, which will be mentioned by the end of the presentation. So I hope you will stay tuned to see what our future plans are. I will briefly introduce you to our team, which is Ahmed Babic and myself. We are actively working and collaborating on a daily basis. Except of two of us, I would like to mention that we are working with our clients and our team has active members from client side with whom we are constantly engaged and tightly working with. Currently, our team has 3 active members for one of our clients, out of which 2 are agile coaches with whom we are working on implementation of agile practices together with the tool. All of these practices that we preach as a team, we do implement in our work as well. Our way of working in our team is agile, and we do see results from it in our case constantly. As we see how our competences expand, let us now reflect on some of those competences and what is it that we do for our clients. So first one is migration to Azure DevOps Services. So our team is in charge of the complete technical migration of projects, starting from the work items such as epics, features, user stories, to test cases, code repositories, pipelines, and artifacts. Our work is based on Microsoft's best practices. We do take a large inspiration from Microsoft's documentation and their way of working when showcasing them to teams. This is done due to the fact which we all can witness. Microsoft is a great example of constantly releasing new updates and products, and this could not be done without having a great tool and processes within their teams. So, I mean, why not use it? Why not use what they already know and they have established and try to incorporate it into project routines as well? This is something that we want to put an emphasis on. We are actively working on educational aspects of tool and process. We are onboarding teams with showing them how to use Azure DevOps in their everyday work based on the specific way of working they have. We also do different role-related trainings where we have developed courses such as Agile way of working in the Azure DevOps, Azure Test Plan in details, and Azure DevOps for developers. And it is important to note that this is continuous aspect. We work with teams from the beginning on the onboarding sessions until they are comfortable to start working on their own. One of very important aspects in all projects and teams that sometimes members do not give enough attention to are metrics. Metrics are highly valuable and can give you the insight into the issues teams didn't even know they have. You are able to track the process of development, to understand what your bottlenecks were when looking back into your sprints, and try to find a way to constantly improve with your work. This is also one of the aspects of our team's work, which we try to showcase as much as possible to other teams as well. Enforcing metrics is done by developing different setups, boards, analytics views, so that teams have easier way of understanding and accessing metrics. One of the tools that we use for the analyzing analytics in more depth is also Power BI. When it comes to the DevOps approach and a more technical part of the tool, our team is also working with the implementation of pipelines, migration of pipelines, setup from different environments, such as Octopus Deploy, TeamCity, and similar. We are also helping out with implementation of CI/CD and working with developers on all the issues they face in the tool and the improvements they can do in their practices. And finally, we are there to support our users on a daily. Our support varies from a small incident to something of a large scale, includes all aspects of support, from a technical tool support to educational support. And it goes to even communicating with Microsoft directly. We try to be as approachable as possible so that all users get the best experience out of the tool and the way they work in their projects. Visions that we have for our clients are pretty straightforward, and still they result in a great outcome. So we have here collaboration, transparency, efficiency, one process, one tool, and most importantly, one mindset. All of these can be incorporated to get a faster delivery. This is what we always aim for when we work with clients, to create a setup where they are able to improve constantly within their project, a setup that could help them out in longer run to be more productive. This setup is created with the approach of having one tool in mind, where you align way of working of everyone within your project in a very transparent manner using one tool. We aim for clients to feel that they have what it takes when it comes to completing and achieving what they have planned for. Uh, we will now switch to Azure DevOps Services. And why is this the tool of our choice, and potentially could be the tool of your choice as well? Firstly, the tool itself provides collaboration. As you are able to see the whole project set up at one place, you are able to jump back and forth between different teams, between different teams' work, and understand what has been going on in each of those teams very easily. In that way, you can achieve a better cross-team collaboration. For example, if you are working in integration projects where this is highly needed. Work items. So you are able to create a hierarchical approach and actually visually witness it in the tool itself. You have work items such as epics, features, user stories, where, as the example, you can create the epic of a large scale deliverable that will be worked for a longer period of time, let's say 3 months. Then epic can be broken down into smaller chunks that are also delivered, which are called features, which can be, for example, planned for and delivered for 1 to 2 months period. Features can be broken down into user stories, which teams are completing within one sprint period, which is around 2 weeks. This is all visually presented and easily traceable in the tool itself. Which gets us to the next point, traceability and transparency. We already mentioned that you can achieve a great collaboration, but you can also achieve a full transparency among your team members as well. You can connect your code to work items, track your releases, deployments, or you can keep track of what has or hasn't been tested out, what is the progress on work done by each team member, and similar. Azure DevOps is a living platform and provides a great ecosystem. This means that it is constantly being updated since the tool itself is on cloud basis. You also have multiple of websites where you are able to connect to other users, talk about the issues you may be facing. You also have a full support by the Microsoft documentation, where you can easily understand the best practices you can do in your tool. Ecosystem of Microsoft is quite a large one, and the integrations with extremely useful tools such as Power BI to do some detailed measurements and analytics, for example, is a very easy setup away. Continuous integration, continuous development and deployment, it is something that is highly talked about right now. It is about creating automated setup for all of your builds and releases for any environments where you are able to integrate, for example, testing together with deployments, automate them and have them as frequently as you like. Azure DevOps provides tons of features for the implementation of various types of pipelines that you can incorporate into your CI/CD, and it gives you possibility to integrate all of your work within the tool. All of these bullets are something that can give you a great recipe for success. Before we show you comparison of this tool to others and talk about the migration and our customer case, we would like to demo the tool for itself first. So you would understand why it is a great collaboration platform for software development projects, but also other types of managing projects as well. So let me just brief you on the features that Azure DevOps Services provides. First feature, which we wanted to talk about, is Azure Boards, where you keep all your work items and manage them and plan for your team's work and your project's work. The next one is Azure repositories, where you store your code versioning, all types of codes, which you can then incorporate with the work that you are doing. Azure pipelines, which, as we mentioned, are a great tool that where you can easily create a setup for your CI/CD environments. Test plans, a really nice feature for continuous testing, which you can also integrate into your work. And also Azure artifacts, where you can create your feeds easily and integrate them into your pipelines and code and so on. So let me now go to the demo part, which is a really exciting one. So now we have created a demo environment for you to show you just as the introduction into the tool. Now this will be only the basic features. Only the basic of these features will be covered. Later on, we will, in the other webinars, we will show you how to actually integrate them into your projects in different ways for roles, role-based and other based presentations. So here, this is one organization. So as you can see here, I have the organization, which is named Ayla Sokol. And I have one project, which is called demo. Now, each of the projects that are made here, they come with these features in the Azure DevOps Services. So that I mentioned previously, you have the icons here. We will go into them briefly. I just wanted to mention that this is available by the Microsoft for free. You have a free trial where you can, create your maybe sandbox environment where you can try to test out how it will look. So when we enter the project itself, we can see that we are welcomed by the um, information about this project. Now, this is only the uh, mock-up setup that we made, so we didn't really include any particular description of the project. However, this is what you can update and add information about your project, about your organization, about your way of working. For example, if you are following specific way of working, you are able to add details in this particular part here, which is connected to a wiki pages, which are found here. Now let me just briefly show you what is found where. On the left side here, as you can see, you have a list of different features that Azure DevOps Services provides. First one is the overview, where we can see a summary, we can see dashboard and wiki. We will show you right away. The next one is Azure Boards, which we mentioned is a great tool for managing your project. Azure Repository for code storage. Azure Pipelines for all kinds of pipelines, setting up CI/CD. Azure Test Plan for keeping your test cases organized and your testing uh, validations done. And also Azure Artifacts, where you can store your feeds and integrate them for your pipelines as well. Okay, so let me now go into the first feature, which is overview part. Now, as I already mentioned, this is what you can update easily. Here you are welcome with the project statistics, some of the details about the pipelines, also the members of the project. Now, if I would like to set up the different dashboards, for example, if I would like to visually present my data, let's say how my team is working when it comes to testing specific releases, for example, or how they are working on a specific planning for the epic that we have. What we can do is actually create a dashboard, customized dashboard with a lot of different widgets that we have here. So this is only the mockup. I created only this design because I wanted to show you how it looks like. However, it can be, of course, customized. So for example, here I have one widget which will show me work assigned. I have other widgets, as you can see here, which will show me, for example, the hierarchy, which we were talking about, of different work items. So here, as you can see, I have some hierarchy. These are epics, these are features, these are user stories, and these are tasks. And I can easily keep track of what has been done in these dashboards. Other charts that I also have is a chart which is related to the testing. As you can see here, I am showing a chart of one of the test plans that I made, which shows me how many are run, how many are passed, how many are failed. Test cases that are found in there. Here is a small burn down charts in case you want to keep track of your team's work. And also we have a short pipeline chart here. As I mentioned, this can be customized, of course. These are only a couple of widgets that I added. But for example, if you click on the edit part here, you have multiple of widgets that you can add. It is a really nice way to show, for example, if you are keeping track of a project as a project manager, you are easily able to add all of these widgets and customize it for yourself so that you can keep track of what is happening inside the project. So now you have here a lot of different charts, for example, charts that are related to test plans, charts that are related to work items, different ways to visualize your metrics. As we already mentioned, metrics are really important, and dashboard is actually one way to visualize it. You can show your lead time, for example, deployment statuses, links, query results, and etc. So a lot of different widgets which you can incorporate. We mentioned that Microsoft is being updated constantly and that it is a living platform. What it means is that you are able to see widgets. For example, you are able to install a lot of different extensions inside the Azure DevOps Services itself. So in case you need the additional extension, for example, that is not found on the list, you are able to install it, add it into your project, and actually visualize it on your dashboards as well. So it is a great addition as well. They have a really nice marketplace with a lot of free widgets, but also some of the paid ones in case you are willing to pay to have integrated visual representation if something is missing, in case something is missing, of course. Okay, so I will now go to the wiki part. Here is something as you saw in the summary part. This is where we added our details about the project. So we added some of the uh, text that we found online. However, you can add here, let's say, if you have a specific way of working and you want to display it as the introduction for everyone who is entering into your project. For example, if you have some stakeholders that want to see your project and want to understand what is happening inside, this is a good way to represent it. Also, in case you have some of the documentation that you want to have written inside the project, which will define, for example, let's say a test management scope or some specific development practices and etc. You are able to add new slides, add new pages and update them um, and add text and links and so on so that everyone can access it. Okay, now we come to the other feature, which is a really nice and exciting feature. It is Azure Boards. As I mentioned already, Azure Boards is a great feature for managing your work. Uh, what you have here is a feature which will where you can add your work items. By adding work items, you are able to plan your work that needs to be done within your project. Here, for example, you have a list of all the work items. You can, I mean, this is only the lists. This is not this is not what we use to plan. This is only what is being added in the meantime and so on. So recently updated, as you can see. But important features here, which we want to emphasize, are these three here. So as you can see, boards, backlogs, and sprints. Now let us go to the boards view first. What will board present to you is actually a list of work items inside specific columns. This is how you will keep track of the states of your work items. So epics, these are epics in this case. Now, when we were creating the setup for the demo environment, I would just like to note that we have taken the inspiration from a scaled agile framework. So we have created the hierarchical approach here. First board that we want to talk about, and the top work item on that hierarchical approach, which takes the longest time to be developed, is actually epic. So here you are able to keep track of your epics. You are able to see who is driving your epics by seeing who is assigned to that specific epic. You can easily keep track of the states by adding columns. In case this is customizable, of course. We took out of the box template. However, this can be customized, and you can add, let's say, additional columns in case your process really needs additional column. The best practice would be to keep it minimalistic so that everyone is aware what each column knows, what each column means, as it is in this case by the out-of-the-box template. All the boards, epics, features, user stories is pretty similar. Similar setup is created. So you have similar functionalities. For example, here, as we saw that Epic is being broken down into features. So features are deliverables for that last for a month or two. Now you can see here At the bottom of each of the work items, in case they are refined and they are showing, they have their features, you can see here a list of features. So you can see how the epic has been broken down. You can easily, I mean, enter each of these features and see what is happening in that feature. What you can also do is, as you have here a mark, which you can mark your work item as done. So if it is striked over, it means that that work item has been closed and it has been completed. Um, so you are able to see what has been broken down, what is being worked on, and so on. Another uh, part of these boards are also analytics. Um, each board has analytics view, as you can see here in this part here. When you enter each board, you are able to keep track of that board's analytics. What that means is when you enter the analytics, you have two diagrams here. You have velocity diagram and a cumulative flow diagram. They are both really valuable for your teams, especially velocity diagram. Why velocity diagram? Because you can plan your work according to the velocity diagram that you saw from, let's say, previous sprints or previous increments. So in case you have planned for more than your team is able to manage, and you needed to do replanning, you are able to see why it has been done and if it has been done. And if you are doing replanning all over again, and if you are overestimating your abilities of the team. So it is a really good way to basically keep track of the work that your team is doing over time, and what, if you have any bottlenecks, what were the bottlenecks, and etc. As I mentioned, each board contains these parts. Other parts, which I already mentioned, is about customization of the board. Now, what you can do, you have in the right corner some of the view options, such as live updates. So in case you have multiple users working on your board, you are able to track their updates immediately. You have a filter option here. If you have multiple work items, you can easily filter them, or a setting option as well. So you are able to create different styles, settings, and etc. for your specific board. Of course, add, let's say, columns and etc. Also different layouts, because there is a way to actually uh, create, let's say, these work items to be different colors. So it is a really nice way to keep trace of, let's say, if you are working with different releases or different parts of the program integrations, different teams, and so on. So it is a really nice visualizations that can be done. This is for the Epic board. Now, uh, what I am trying to search is the list of the teams. So I am able to go from team to team, to jump from team to team very easily and actually see what they are working on. So I will now go to the art level. Now, art level is the agile release train in the scaled agile framework. It is a feature level which is planned on in increments lasting up to 2 months. So here we can see the list of features, a similar concept as the boards, as we already mentioned. The only difference is that the features are now broken down into user stories. So you can see here that each of these features is actually a user story itself. Each of these features have user stories that have more details on how teams should work um, inside their planned scope. So this is the feature board, and I would like to show you also a team board. Now, a team board is where the user stories are being delivered and where you plan your scope on the sprint level. Sprint level being 2 weeks. Now here, this is what we wanted to show you more, and what is a small difference, let's say. So teams are working with bugs. They are working with testing as well. What is a good thing is that you can show it in the tool itself. So as you can see here, for example, in my result state, I have one user story which is being worked on, which has all the tasks closed, as you can see here, and which has one bug assigned, which is done. However, I can see that my testing has X sign on it, which means that this testing has failed. One test case has not passed. And this is I mean, it's great to see this on the board. So for all managers to know what is being tested on, what team members are actually working on, and etc. Now, what is a good thing is that, as I already mentioned, you can easily just click on each of these work items and see details of them. But what is good here is that you can integrate your testing in the work item. So you see here, there is a small arrow that says Open Test Suite. So now if I click on it, it will show me test suite, so a folder where I have all my testing done for this specific user story. So let's say I want to see where the issue was, what has failed, and etc. It will show me the test plan, as you can see here. So the test suite, a folder, uh, which for the user story, which we shown before. So change text. So here I have two uh, tests that have one failed and one has passed. And I have different tabs. One is defined, execute, and chart tab. Now in the execution tab is where I execute my tests. I run them, be it manually or automated. And I also have a define tab where I actually can define, reorganize, reorder my test cases, maybe update them, and etc. I just wanted to show you how it looks like from the board's view, and we will go into a bit more details afterwards, after we finish with the boards. So this is basically how the boards look like. Now, all of these setups are set in the project setting part, which you can see in the bottom here, where we basically create teams, create different iterations, area paths, and etc. Integrate all of them. Of course, all of this setup is created together with experts, together with agile coaches, related that are working actually on those projects and that are working on the processes. Let me now show you the backlog view. Now, the backlog view of the boards, it is basically the list of work items. Uh, so each board has a list of work items and it has a view as backlog. So when you enter your backlog view, you can see all the work items that you are planning to do or are being done currently in your sprints, in your increments, and so on. What you can do here and why this is a really nice setup, you can see, for example, hierarchy here. You can add different columns in case you want to see on your backlog. Let's say you have your backlog view as the epic. I will just change my theme to the epic boards, as you can see here, and I will show you a hierarchy, full hierarchy that you can see for a specific epic. So I have planned my epic in this way here. As you can see, I have delivered delivery for within a couple of features. Each feature has been broken down into a couple of user stories, which then were delivered to teams to be worked on. And then teams are working on them and they are delivering it and so on. So backlog view will help you reorganize those work. So in case you have some planning to be done, you can easily just drag and drop motion here, and you can just basically move the priority of your work that is being done. You can also add different columns. For example, as I mentioned, for the iteration, for let's say if you want to keep track of the progress, there is a option for the roll-up column as well. How you can do that is that you have column options here. And you can basically adjust your columns and your view. add a column or add a roll-up column, which will keep track of the progress of the work items. Why the backlog view is also good is that it can serve you in your planning sessions. So here in my view options tab, I have a side panel which will show me a planning session as well. So in case I want to plan my specific work in sprints on a sprint level or on an increment level, I can just easily drag and drop this into the planning section. So if you are, for example, having your planning sessions with teams, which you are working with on, let's say, every second week, you have your planning session, and you want to plan your work ahead. So what you can do is that you can just drag and drop for the specific work. Here, this is the Epic board. I would do that for the team on their boards, so user story board, but the concept is the same. You will have the list of all the iterations, all the sprints related for that specific team. And I could easily keep track of, I could easily do a planning session in there as well. Uh, what is good is that there are extensions which can allow you to and help you out in your retrospective sessions as well as in the refinement sessions. Of course, this is used for the refinement as well, where you are easily able to see what needs to be more refined and so on from your backlog. Okay. Also the sprint part. Sprint board is where teams are working in. This is more from a team perspective. As you can see, we have some of the work items, user stories, and we have user stories that have been broken down into tasks. So team members are adding tasks on these user stories on a daily basis. Daily tasks which they are working on in order to actually deliver this user story on time. So as you can see, I have here in a couple of different columns. Here is where I have my list of sprints. In case I have a couple of them, I would see them on this level as well. What is good is that I can plan my capacity for the team, and I can also analyze it by the end, where I can access the metrics, velocity graph, and see if we had some bottlenecks later on. This is the burn down chart, so it will show you let's say how your burn down looks like over the period of one sprint. Of one sprint. You can also see the assigned work and filter it out, customize it for your own team's needs, and so on. Okay, so this is something that is related to the Azure boards. Queries is where you create your queries. So you will create uh, the list of work items that you want to see. Maybe if you have integration setups and etc. Let us see how it looks like. So it looks like really this is one that I created, but it looks very simple, a Boolean logic, which you can create, set up to see results, basically, for the different work items and etc. So we will quickly go through the other features as well, not in too many details, as we would like to show that in more details later on. First feature that we want to address is repositories. Now, Azure repositories store your code. You have Git versioning and TFVC. Mostly used is Git because it is very much very modern versioning, and it has a lot of benefits compared to the TFVC. Here is where you can see your code. This is where you put all of your work when it comes to the codes, be it different types of programming languages or XML code and etc. So all types of the code. I will just show you how it briefly looks like. So this is something that we took from online that was free to take from the open source website. Here we have one Azure ML file, which you can see we have a code that is written here. We can edit it in case we don't want to do some changes in our environment. We can edit it here. We also have a history of all the updates that are done inside here. And we can also do some comparisons in case we want to do some updates and etc. We can do the comparisons as well. Okay. Uh, we have here a list of branches. In case there is a lot of different branches, you can just keep track of those branches and what is done on which one. On the left side, we have commits, and you can easily enter each of these. For example, here, as you can see, the status is failed. So I can easily enter it and see why it has failed, what are the issues that are found here, and etc. I can also see pushes, as you can see here, that are created, all the branches that have been created, tags and pull requests. Now you are able to manage your pull requests. For example, if you are having policies for your code in specific, you can create those policies here. So not everybody can push your changes. And you can actually create like the setup for your quality code here. So this was about the Azure repositories. Now we will go to the pipelines quickly. So as I mentioned earlier, pipelines will help us out integrate whole project with the deployments, with builds and releases, and etc. A great feature is that Azure Pipeline really offers a wide variety of pipelines that you can set up. You can add different tasks to the pipelines. You can create CI/CD setup and etc. I won't go too much into the details here, but you can see that this is, for example, a build pipeline. We have also a release pipeline, different environments, task groups, and deployments groups. I will just do a short recap. I will show you how the pipeline's creation looks like, just briefly. Okay, so when we create a new pipeline, we have here different types of repositories where our code may be stored, which we can select. Here we will select Azure repositories. We can also use the different type of editor in case our pipeline is not YAML. I here select which repository do I want to connect this pipeline to, which will be my demo, and I will configure my pipeline in the specific way. Now here I will add ASP.NET Core, just a very, very simple pipeline. This is my initial setup that I get. Now I can update according to what I need in my project here. Here on the show assistant part, you have a multiple of tasks. Now you can add tasks for testing, for different builds and so on. So you can add multiple of tasks that can help you out set up this pipeline here. I won't do anything. I will just save and run this pipeline as it is, just to show you how it looks like. And as you can see here, I get a job here. Now this job is where my pipeline is being run, and I can see how my pipeline looks like. So basically, in case I have any issues, this is more of a technical part, but in case anyone has any issues with the deployment or release, you are able to see the error here. So it will not be a green arrow, but it will be a red X with the error log here. So you can see what is the issue later on. Okay, so that is about the pipelines. Also, I will just mention briefly the artifacts which are connected to it, where you are able to connect your feeds. So create feeds, connect feeds, and etc. So everything to store at one place. And lastly, we have a great feature which is related to a testing part for your projects. Now you can basically create suits, different types of plans for specific needs. So let's say you have releases, you are doing your tests on a sprintly basis and etc. So this here is a test plan which is created for a sprint basis. As you can see here, it says sprint one. This one I just showed you briefly, but let's go to the all test plan section. And here is where I can see the list of the test plans. Now I will go to the regression part, regression test plan, which we didn't cover. I can see here that I have two suits which are connected to the regression part, which I want to execute for the, let's say, upcoming release. Uh, of course, I can define them as I already mentioned. So let's say I want to enter one of the test cases and see what is being worked on. Uh, each of the work items has a similar setup, has the deployment part, and has the development part and related work. That is where you connect your releases and connect your code to specific work items. This is test case. It has steps, it has expected results, and so on. You can also create automated test cases to associate the specific test case to the automation that you are running. You can execute it, as I already mentioned, as a manual or automated test cases. Of course, currently it is preferred to do as much automation as possible. So how you can do it is that you can run with options and you can add automated tests, select your build, select your pipelines, and so on, and run those tests. Here we won't do that here, but in the future webinar, we are planning to do that. A good thing is that we can keep track of the progress. Now, for a lot of managers, it is important to see what they have been, what users, what quality assurance engineers have been testing out. What you can do is access a progress report for each of these test suits, test plans. Now, I was in my regression test plan. I will add my stories test plan, which has executed passed and failed tests. You can see here that I have a short overview of what has been happening and how many tests have been passed, failed, run, and etc. And in case any bugs are associated with it, I can actually see it. Also, you can create multiple of parameters, configurations, see all the runs of the execution of test plans, and so on. So this is briefly. Azure DevOps Services is really a big tool, which we cannot see in details right now. This is only a brief overview of it. We wanted to show you this before we continue with our presentation session so that you know what we are talking about. Now let's go. Let's just continue with our presentation session. Now, as we already mentioned, some of the basic features. We did the overview, we did the demo. So we have just to again say features that are coming in the Azure DevOps Services. These are Azure boards, repositories, pipelines, test plans, and artifacts. We will do a small comparison of Azure DevOps Services against some of the tools, and we'll talk on what it makes it a good management tool compared to other popular softwares. First one we will talk about is Jira. Now Jira has a great board visualization, and you can keep track of what has been completed when it comes to work items. However, it is hard to keep track of testing that has been done, as you need to integrate additional tools that will keep track of what has been tested out. Same thing with code, hard to keep track of what has been completed and released, as you would need to use something additionally to understand what work has been deployed, for example. When it comes to managing projects in Excel sheet or Microsoft project, those tools are restrictive in a sense that, for example, Excel is not that easy to keep transparency on a higher level and alignment as well among your team members. Microsoft project does come also with some smaller number of possibilities when it comes to creating work items and a hierarchical approach. Both of them are not complete management tools for software managing in particular, as you don't have integrations for code or testing. Tools such as TeamCity or Octopus Deploy are good tools for build configurations. However, same issue arises as with the other tools. They do not offer full support when it comes to project management. I will just take a sip of the water and be right back. Okay, apologies. So let's continue with how to migrate part. So after understanding why to migrate, the question arises on how to migrate. In order to try to get the idea of the migration, we divided it into two parts. First part is what you can see here, which is migration of the organization. In Azure DevOps Services, organization is used to connect groups of related projects. You saw that in our setup, we had one organization with one project. What can be done is that, for example, the best practice is to have one project, so everyone can work in the same way. However, in case you have a couple of tenants, let's say, and each tenant is working in the restrictive way, but they still collaborate in some work, then it is good to have multiple projects inside same organization so that, let's say, they can collaborate in case it is needed. Firstly, what is required is to create a setup environment in the tool in which you will be working. Technical migration also means to migrate all data that is needed from previous tools, such as work items, pipelines, code repositories, and etc. It is always recommended to try and start clean and fresh. Try to migrate as less data as possible. In order to completely adapt to this process, it is really nice to start fresh. It is then time to work on a process setup from both tool and project perspective. Together with agile coaches and experts in the agile, it is important to create vision from which you are able to work on forward. In the cases of our clients, since we worked in the large scale organizations, we worked on implementation of agile together with the scaled agile framework. This means that teams needed to understand ways of working before starting to work in the tool. Process setup comes together with workshops and trainings. After common vision is set, it is important for everyone to get education from tools perspective as well. For example, how to follow and implement tool in the ceremonies, how to plan your work, what specific roles should be in charge of prior to those ceremonies, and how to follow up on your work of your teams and set up different goals. Lastly, it is important to understand that time and resources are important to have. Any change, of course, is investment, but a good change is something that will pay off quicker than some might think. Second part of the migration is migration of teams and projects. Here, when we mention team, it's talking about a smaller group of people that perform ceremonies together, but are a part of a bigger compilation, such as project. team setup is created in the Azure DevOps Services, first of all. It includes creating area paths, it includes creating iteration paths, adding iteration paths, adding dashboards, and giving specific permissions, licenses, and so on. Then we come to the alignment part, where teams are following specific protocols and guidelines on how to work within created setup. So what are best practices inside their environment and so on. All of these information are obtained through having multiple of workshops and trainings that are conducted for teams. Teams go through different role-based trainings for process and for the tool and how to actually work within the tool by following best practices. This is also a great time to collaborate with team members, understand how the tool functions, what functionalities can be used, and how to easily maintain and up your daily work. I mean, having workshops and educations is a continuous process, and it is always important to follow up the work of team and have continuous dialogues with them to understand if they have any bottlenecks that they are facing with. Lastly, we create there is a sandbox environment for teams to start their work in before accessing to the real environment. So it is a good practice to have them try and test out how they should work before actually implementing it into their organization. Lastly, let me give you the example of one of the clients that we were working on and their journey, how the transformation looked like from the tool perspective. So these are the before data. Now, client had over 500 members in the organization that were following more than 20 different processes, which teams themselves created and followed inside 10 different collections and organizations. So they were distributed among many different organizations. They used different tools. They used a lot of different tools, and they had a lot of customized processes, which they were establishing themselves. All of this resulted in a lack of collaboration and transparency and also alignment, which provided not that good results, and it proved that delivery was slow and not what was expected at this times. Afterwards, they started implementing a change on a higher level, started to implement common process for all the different teams. Together with the process, they introduced the usage of only one tool for the whole setup. Everything they needed was in one place, and there was no need for additional tools to keep track of their work. Since everything was found inside the one tool, which in this case is Azure DevOps Services, it was easily able to keep track of what has been done, to collaborate, and basically to create that setup of being transparent and aligned together inside that particular project. All of this we have implemented together with the agile practices and scaled agile framework in this case of the client. All of this together came to be a great success, and one very important factor has been increased, which is a delivery, which was now 5 times faster compared to the previous results. To conclude today's presentation, Azure DevOps Services, a tool that provides a bunch of features to create organized setup of your project, is a tool that can be of a great value when chosen to be implemented together with specific way of working. We have seen amazing results in the delivery and transparency when incorporated with Agile, and it is the tool that will help you unlock your potential and unlock potential of our clients as well. In case you are interested in more details about this topic, feel free to approach Ahmed and I on our email addresses or LinkedIn platform. Also, feel free to approach our manager, Hendrik Selman, in case you are interested in some of the opportunities our team can provide. And last thing for today, future plans. We have mentioned at the very beginning that this is only the introduction into topics that we would like to cover. Some of the topics for the upcoming webinar we will organize are more process related and role related topics, and we are planning to organize presentations in the agile delivery in Azure DevOps Services, for example. That will be our next presentation, which will be a very interesting one for all the project managers for sure, where we will discuss about how to plan in the tool, how to refine in the tool, and etc. Afterwards, we will also work on creating webinars where we will present some of the details on how to set up and measure your work in the tool. Except of these, we are also planning to do some more technical webinars related to, especially made for quality assurance engineers and those that are interested in testing, and also for the developers that would like to work and engage more in Azure DevOps, in Azure repositories and Azure pipelines, and etc. Okay, now we came to the questions and answers section. Um, so
Thank you
yes,
very much. Thank you very much, Ayla, for a great presentation. As you already said, now it's time for questions. You can post your questions in the chat box publicly or send them to the host directly and I will read them aloud. During the presentation, we have received a couple of questions privately, so I think we can start with Q&A sessions. The first question is, are you using out-of-the-box dashboards or do you propose and help the teams create suitable dashboards?
okay. Yes, of course, we use both approaches. So basically, what we do is that we implemented the dashboards that each team receives, which is related to their flow metrics diagrams and which is related to their overview pages. Now, this is what we achieved together with our agile coaches. We thought that these widget specific would be the best to actually for teams to keep track of what they are doing. So for example, for the flow metrics, we included cycle time, we included lead time for specific work items, so that in each of the ceremonies, users can actually enter, team members can enter and see their bottlenecks, for example, for the specific sprints and etc. In the overview dashboards, we have included some of the dashboard widgets, such as uh, let's say work items assigned and etc. So just a short overview, which will help out get more details into the project. Now, I think the best practice would be to actually implement it based on the project itself. So basically, you can use widgets, which are found in the Microsoft, which I think are great widgets. I mean, there is a list of a lot of widgets which can be used, and they can really help you out in your projects. And you can basically talk to those that are in charge, those that are experts, and see what will help out for your teams, for example. I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ayla. I think we can proceed with the next one. The next one would be, how do you connect automation test cases to the test suite? And can we visualize the automation test cases outcome on the board connected to user story?
Of course, of course, yes. As I mentioned, this it will be too much technical in this webinar to go into details on how to connect it. However, I've shown you in the test case, there is a part which is associated automation, where you connect your code, your test cases that you have, for example, in your Visual Studio, together with the specific automation, let's say, test case. And then you can run them locally, you can run them on specific build agents. Which are also found in the tool, connected to the tool as well. And in that way, you have a tab which is called runs. I will briefly show you that. We didn't try to integrate it in this specific part because it will be our the part of the webinar later on. But what you have here is runs. Runs will show you, which will show each run that is done from the automation tests. And you can see all the errors that are in case you have any bugs and etc. You can see what has been found in that specific run. Each of these tests can also be connected to the user story as well, and you can easily visualize them also in a couple of different widgets as well. But that is something that we would like to actually show in our future webinar as well. So if you're interested, of course, stay tuned and assign to that one where we'll discuss more details about it.
Yes, thank you very much. The next one would be, if we use GitHub and Azure DevOps, how do you handle the licenses? Do we need to pay double, once for a GitHub and again for Azure DevOps, or it is something else?
I am not really sure about the GitHub licenses, to be quite honest. What we do really advise is to try and use everything at one place. So a great practice would be to basically use Azure repositories, because Azure repositories itself provide you with a lot of benefits that also GitHub has. So if you are, I mean, why would you use something to pay double the amount, right? And if you have everything at one place. But of course, you can use, in case your project insists to use a GitHub, you can also use a GitHub. Not sure about the licenses though. We would need to check that out. However, my advice to you is to use everything at one place so that you don't have to worry about multiple of licenses and etc. So just have one license for one environment and it will be enough.
Yes, thank you very much. Let's continue with the next one. The next one would be, is the Azure board agnostic in terms of visual display? Does it support a different workflow than the one that is very similar to Scrum project management? An example would be Kanban flow, where the term iteration or sprint may not be useful or necessary. Do we have other process and workflow possibilities?
Yes, of course. As I mentioned, this is only the demo part. The Azure DevOps itself, you can customize your workflow as best as you want. So for example, if your project is working in a Kanban, you can create those workflows. You can customize different processes, different setups, and so on. This one is the agile process. However, let me just briefly show you how it looks like. So basically, you have here project settings. And inside the project settings, we didn't want to go into too many details, but here you can create different configurations for your team. So you can create team configuration, you can create project configuration, and so on. As you can see here, different types of licenses and etc. What you can do, just a second. So when it comes to the organization part, so for example, we now saw the project settings. So there is where we add our iterations, our area paths, and etc., where we define how we will work like. But on the organization settings as well, you have different types of setups that you can create. So you can choose each project's process. So our advice is to work agile. But for example, you can change the process of each of the projects to be a Scrum, for example, or to be basic or to be customized and so on. So when you enter the process, for example, here, you have a list of different processes and you can also create your own in each of these. So for example, if I have possibility to create the inherited process, disable this process, and so on. So this is only for the administrator, of course, and in the basically relation with your experts. And here, when you are creating a new workflow, you are able to set up how will you work, what are the work items, what is connection between them, and so on. This is more detailed thing that administrators of the Azure DevOps Services should do. However, of course, all setups like Kanban boards, different types of processes can be easily managed as well. Okay, I hope I answered that question as well.
Thank you, Ayla. The next questions that popped out would be, what are the main disadvantages you would like to highlight comparing the Azure DevOps versus Jira, Jenkins, Test Trail software, and etc.?
Mhm. I would say that the con, one of the main one, is licenses. We didn't mention it here, but there is a license policy in the Azure DevOps Services. You have different types of the permissions and different types of licenses for each of the users. So you have stakeholder, uh, basic, and basic plus test plan. Each of these licenses, for example, stakeholder is a free license. However, basic and basic plus test plans are paid licenses. And in case you want, let's say you have different roles. So stakeholders is for someone who just wants to read work items and to see what is happening inside the boards, let's say. But if you want to have someone who will contribute, you will need to pay licenses for those. So you will need to pay basic license or basic plus test plan in case you have QAs who are working with testing in your project. Um, these are all the additions in which you need to pay attention with to keep, let's say, costs on some of this level. So if you have multiple of users, team members or project members, and etc. For example, we have been working with projects, as we mentioned, that had more than 500 users. Um, you would need someone to pay attention to those licenses and pay attention to the cost that it generates and who should have who should have which license. So I think that would be the main challenge and con, let's say, from my perspective at least.
Thank you. I think we can proceed with the next one. The next question would be, hi, I want to take Azure DevOps certifications. There are many, but if I want to learn more about testing and test plans, where can I find more information and where to begin?
Mhm. When it comes to the certifications, um, it's the best way is to go and try to search for the Udemy courses. We have been going through a couple of Udemy courses, which are really good when it comes to the Azure DevOps Services itself. Um, there is also, except of the Udemy courses, there are also a lot of great Microsoft documentation. So Microsoft they are working constantly on updating their documentation, and especially in the old areas. Basically, if you want to work within as the developer or as the QA, just Google Azure Test Plan, for example, and it will provide you with the guidance on how to utilize it in your work. It is not only from a technical perspective. There are exercises on how to create pipelines, for example, how to add testing in your pipelines, how to create all the test plans, how to manage your testing, and etc. When it comes to the certification, specific for the Azure DevOps Services, I would say the best certification that we could find from the Microsoft is related to the Azure itself, where you also go through some of the partial training for the Azure DevOps Services as well, and for the Azure portal itself. That is until now what we could find related to the Azure DevOps Services. So as I mentioned, Udemy courses, there is a list of great Udemy courses related to testing in the Azure DevOps Services, also Azure DevOps Services in general. Also Microsoft documentation, really good documentation, as well as the Microsoft Azure certification for beginners and also for the administrators. They have also, for each of those certifications, they have learning path. So you are able to see the details for each of the parts that you need to learn, for example.
Thank you, Ayla. The next question would be, What kind of metrics do you use to measure and increase the speed of delivery?
Okay, so we use cycle time. We use lead time. We try to follow the work of work items and how they are being managed. So, for example, what we generated, we created one Power BI dashboard where we enter after, uh, let's say, a couple of months, and we try to analyze the approach of teams and try to analyze the approach of the whole organization, and what were the bottlenecks in that specific time frame. What we do is that we generate the cycle time from the work items. We see if they have been completed within the specific sprints and specific increments, how many work items has been completed, what has been deployed, what hasn't been deployed, what is still maybe in the active state. And when we see that, we enter the tool and try to search for a history of those work items. So we see what was the bottleneck basically in the team. And after we generate that analysis, it is 1 day or 2 day job, because we try to divide our work among team members. Everyone gathers, they show their analyze, and then we talk to those that manage teams. We talk to those that manage release trains, for example, project managers and etc. And with them and with agile coaches as well. And with them, we see what are bottlenecks. If team was not having planning sessions well, if they didn't do refinements well, if they were stopped by sudden capacity decrease, for example, by the vacation period and etc., that they didn't plan, something happened in the meantime and so on. And we try to talk to them to see what is happening. And then they approach to the teams, or we approach to the teams. That is the conclusion that we gather from the meeting, and talk to them and see what is happening in that perspective and how we can improve their progress overall.
Thank you, Ayla. The next question would be, how long does it approximately take from start until you are up and running with Azure DevOps?
Well, it depends from a project to project, I would say. It depends on the scope of your project. So basically, if you are a large organization and you want to change your way of working, first of all, you need to create some setup and you need to create some vision, first of all, in order to actually start setting up everything inside the tool. If you already have established the vision and you already established some way of working, but you want to change your setup, you want to change your tool, that is something that can be easily done. So just the migration itself, for example, based on the best practices, depending on the team to team, of course. Some teams have loads of work and the migration can last, let's say, up to a couple of days until up to a couple of hours. So that's only the technical part of the migration to the Azure DevOps Services. But then comes other parts, which is educations. Teams need to set up their ways of working to follow the organization's ways of working and etc. That takes a longer period of time. Only the educations, workshops, for example, that we do, take a couple of hours for each team, let's say on one specific topic. And later on, we follow up on their work and try to see how they are engaging. As I mentioned, from the technical perspective, it is really easy to migrate to the tool itself. However, if you want to follow what is happening inside your project, inside your process, together with the tool, then it is a bit longer period where you would need someone to assist you.
Thank you, Ayla. The next question would be, how do you assign releases to the backlog when you plan the iterations according to the program increments and sprints for it?
Okay, so if you are interested in relating releases to the work items itself, yeah, so each work item, as we shown, just a second. So each of these work items has a specific part which is related to deployments and development. So let me go to the new work item. So let's say I want to connect release to the feature, basically. As you can see here on the right side, you have deployment part. This is what you can use to connect your releases to the Azure pipelines, to your release pipeline. Now, of course, you will go to the releases part, create a pipeline, and then associate it with your work item. This is something that we wanted to do later on the other webinar, as it is also a technical one. But it is really nice to visually see what has been released or hasn't been released. Typically, how to track if something is released on the board itself. On the Kanban board is that those states. So specifically, the best practice would be not to close work item until it is released. So until it has been released, you will keep your work item in the result state, for example. And when it is released, you will close it fully, and then you will understand that those work items have been released. And once you enter each of these work items, for example, features, you will see the release date on the feature itself and all the details of the feature. Um, I hope that's a nice answer.
Thank you, Ayla. I think the next question would be possibility of integration with Microsoft Teams. What is the difference in the way the project is managed via Teams Planner versus Azure DevOps with focus on Epic and features?
Uh, Teams Planner. Hmm. Um, when it comes to integration of the teams together with the Azure DevOps Services, there is a couple of options that you can use. Microsoft has developed integration extension for the teams, which you can install. And what you can do is basically you can add your work items within the channels. So if you update any of the work items in the backlog, you can easily keep track of it. Just the notification pops up in the channel. That is good in case you have, let's say, bugs or you want to track your testing and so on. So what you can keep track of is, for example, if a new bug is added, you will see, okay, it is added in the channel. Let me see what is happening there. And you can enter here. You can enter in the channel and see what is being in there. Now, as we mentioned for the Microsoft Planner and Microsoft Project in the Teams part as well. Thing about it is that they are restrictive. So you can create some of the work items, but the thing is that you cannot really um, have a full setup, a management setup, like to have all of these hierarchies that we've shown, to have repositories, pipelines, and so on. What you can do with the teams is that you can showcase, which we also try to do, to add a board, add integration in the Microsoft Teams and Azure DevOps, and add a board visualization in the Teams itself. That is possible as well. So you can connect, for example, if you have a specific channel for your team and you want to see, to keep track of what is happening inside your team on that channel. From the board, you can connect it and you will visually see from the Azure DevOps Services a board itself. So you can manage those, you can create work items and etc. So there is a couple of different integrations with the Azure DevOps Services and Microsoft Teams. So basically all Microsoft products are easily integrated with the Azure DevOps Services.
Thank you. I think we have one more question for the end, which is pretty good. When can we expect next coming webinars on these topics and where to find the information?
Okay, so the next upcoming webinar will be on the Agile delivery in the Azure DevOps Services, where, as I mentioned, we will try to show how to do some of the agile practices inside the tool itself and how to integrate it inside the tool. Um, we are expected to do it until the end of this year, probably during the November or beginning of December. We are planning to do that one. All the details will be provided on system verification pages, both LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Also, you can keep track of it on our LinkedIn pages. You can contact Ahmed or I in case you are interested in it and so on. So feel free to follow us. Feel free to uh, basically connect with us in case you are interested in it.
Thank you, Ayla. As we have come to the end of today's webinar, I would like to thank you all for participating and thank you, Ayla, for a great presentation. You will receive the recording of this webinar later on. In case you have some other questions, feel free to contact Ayla or me. Thank you all for today and see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.